going wild. Haitian in the building, so original. Got the haters catching feelings. Get your hands up to the ceiling and keep them held high, cause St. Louis isn't ready. Forget about it, goodbye. Hold up, we just saying hi. Five somebody, rise up. Weekdays, catch us live somebody. Let's go.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Pascal Show. Hopefully you guys are doing well out there. If I haven't done it yet, Happy New Year to all you guys. If you haven't heard it from my mouth, Happy New Year to everybody. Hopefully you guys are all doing well. Had a wonderful one, festive one, and all that stuff. You know what I mean? We got a very interesting and special show for you guys today. I'm very excited about this because here's the thing: there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot that are still open-ended stories and cases that we left in last year that are still just kind of sitting there. We still got a lot of questions right now, y'all. A whole lot of questions, especially revolving around this whole story, revolving around Kylen and Crystal. Kylen Schulte and Crystal Turner. They were two people that were murdered out in Moab, Utah. Of course, they were found, but they were found in a very unfortunate way, right? So there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to go through. There's a lot to talk about here. And I do have two very special people coming on today, this morning, to confirm. I'm going to kill this music real quick. Debunk. I'll put that back on. Some of these theories and some of these conspiracies and all this stuff, the rumors and all that stuff that's been revolving around this particular case and another case as well. And, we have been saying this man's name a lot lately. All right. He was trending really hard last year. Brian Laundrie. If there's a connection between Brian Laundrie, Gabby Petito, Kylen Schulte, and Crystal Beck, a.k.a. Crystal Turner, as well. So, like I said, we got a lot to talk about. And we do have some very special guests coming on today to chop it up and talk to us about all of this. And like I said, to confirm, to debunk, and all that good stuff. Because like I said, I think a lot of us are still sitting here letting this marinate in our minds of, hey, is it true or is it not? Is there a connection here between Brian Laundrie, Gabby Petito, and Kylen and Crystal? Is there or is there not? We all have the theories, or there's a lot of people that have theories that Brian Laundrie went on some crazy killing spree, went on some murder spree, right? And then, of course, unfortunately, he ended up doing the same thing to Gabby Petito. There's a lot of theories and a lot of stories that are ruminating, obviously. And we're here to finally debunk all of that. So very, very soon, I will be having the father of Kylen Schulte on, Sean Paul Schulte. And I'll also have his private investigator, Jason Jensen, on the show today. So we got an action-packed day, action-packed morning show for you guys. We're going to get down to the nitty-gritty of it. But first, we got to go into some of the backstory because there's some things that we want to know, right? Just to kind of warm ourselves up because, of course, this is a story we talked about months ago. And, we haven't really talked about it in a while. So I want to be able to bring it back, right? And remind you guys, warm y'all up into this, okay? Before we get our gentlemen and our guests on the show today. But before we get into everything going, before we get this ball moving, before we get this rev this engine up, please do me the small favor, y'all. Hit that like button down below. Smash it, destroy it, all that stuff. And of course, you know what? Nuke that subscribe button, all right? Send that subscription number all the way up. And of course, those likes down below. Send those likes all the way up, okay? And share this feed. Because hopefully, like I said, this episode right here, we will finally have things completely confirmed. and we can all walk away with some sort of what's the word? Clarity. Okay? Which is something that we all need, especially with this particular story. Like I said, Brian Laundrie, Gabby Petito, Kylen Schulte, and Crystal Turner supposedly were in the same bar at the same time. Their paths have crossed in a different ways, right? Now the question still remains, because I still see this on Twitter, I still see this on the Instagrams and the YouTubes and all that, commentators putting out their 2 cents still to this day, all right, on their theories of, is Brian the creepy guy that Kylen Schulte is describing when she says, hey, there's a creepy guy lurking around, and if we aren't around tomorrow, that means we were murdered by this creepy guy. Is the creepy guy Brian Laundrie or not? Hopefully we will get some clarity, get some transparency with that answer this morning. Okay? So we are going to be talking about a bunch of stuff, but like I said, hit that like button. Do not forget to crush that subscribe button. All right? I'm working hard out here in these streets to give you guys the stories that you need, and to debunk some of these theories that are lurking about, that are still floating around. And hopefully, like I said, today, we will get some of these questions finally answered. Okay? But before we jump into all that, let's do a little bit of a news clip, because I know there's a lot of people that are going, well, who is Kylen Schulte? Who is Crystal Turner? Okay? And we are going to get into that. There are 2 people that were married just a few months before this that ended up living out in Utah, in the Moab, Utah area. And they seem to be doing great. They seem to be just a happy married couple, right? And they were camping nearby, out in Moab, and of course, there was a supposed creepy guy that was lurking around their campsite, because they were doing the van life too, just so you know, if you didn't know that as well. And of course, something incredibly terrible happens to them, where mutual friends of Sean Paul Schulte and of Kylen Schulte ends up finding them both dead near the campsite, yards away from the campsite. And of course, I did this interview with Miss Hunter. Please go and check it out. People have been checking that one out quite a bit. All right. And so, of course, I feel like I needed to close this chapter of this story. And of course, like I said, bring to light some things that the theories that people have, the conspiracy theories that people have. So we're going to get into it here. But before we jump into all that, and before we go into the interviews and in the conversations, I do have a little news clip. Like I said, we're gonna backtrack a little bit, so we know a little bit before we head forward. Okay, so just bless me with this, and I'd be greatly appreciated. It'll be greatly appreciated. I mean, let's jump into this, shall we?
On New this hour, the FBI has joined the investigation into the deaths of 2 women found dead in the LaSalle Mountains just last week.
Fox 13's Sydney Glenn spoke with Grand County Sheriff Stephen White about how the murders of Kylen Schulte and Crystal Turner are rocking that small town.
The Grand County Sheriff says this is one of the largest investigations this agency has ever seen. He says they have called in outside help, including the FBI.
The community's pretty stirred up right now.
A small, peaceful town known for their scenery.
There's a lot of curiosity in the town.
Now the site of a double murder.
I think this is the first double homicide we've ever had.
People want answers.
It's hard knowing that we can't figure anything out and we can't find these people that did it to them.
What happened to Kylen Schulte and Crystal Turner?
We're hoping there's lots of transparency with our local officials. That's our biggest concern right now.
Grand County Sheriff Stephen White says they have brought in the FBI and State Bureau of Investigation to help.
Everything is being done that we can possibly do.
Now, here's the thing. Hate to pause it there, but the thing is obviously there's a lot of questions here, right? We all have the questions of how much really, how involved was the law enforcement revolving around these two women's murder? Just out of curiosity, right? Now, we have heard from many, many other people, and we've seen with our own two eyes that body cam footage where Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito are pulled over and they're just basically treated with kid gloves, right? So it makes you wonder, as far as the law enforcement, were they really doing what they needed to do? Were they doing their due diligence? Were they really getting down to the nitty-gritty and trying to find out who murdered these two beautiful souls? Here's the other thing, too. They weren't found by law enforcement. No, they were not. Law enforcement gave up. They stopped their search. And a normal, regular civilian and friend of the family found them herself. Law enforcement said, oh, we're done. And what's crazy to me is that their bodies were found yards away from their campsite, y'all. From their campsite. So why wouldn't law enforcement go to the point of origin, right? Find their campsite and then span out, right? Search the perimeter, right? And expand and just keep going on and on and on from where their campsite was and move out, right? But unfortunately, law enforcement said, nope, we good. Wiped their hands clean of this. And the very next day, we had a friend of the family go out of their way and found those two young women's bodies. So let me roll that back one more time because, I feel like this dude capping just a little bit. All right. This dude is not telling the full truth. In my personal opinion, he's saying that law enforcement's doing everything they can, but really, are they?
Is being done that we can possibly.
Brought in the FBI and State Bureau of Investigation to help.
Everything is being done that we can possibly do. That's why we've asked for the additional resources. We want to make sure that we do this thorough, we do it complete, and we do it right.
Now, here's the other thing, too. I want to point this out. The only reason why they're doing everything they can, doing everything they can do right now is because the bodies were found at this point. These two women's souls, the bodies were found at this point. So now they're going, oh, we're bringing in this and that. Or now we're looking at this homicide. We're investigating, so on and so forth. But really, though, was law enforcement really doing everything in their power to bring whoever did this heinous crime to justice? Were they?
He says deputies are working extra hours, extra shifts.
We're not taking anything off the table. We're investigating this at every possible avenue for every possible thing.
Everyone in this scenic town is searching for answers.
If you're scared or anything or know anything, just come forward because they deserve it. They deserve justice, no matter what.
The sheriff says they have received a lot of tips, but they are hoping people will continue to call in as this investigation is ongoing. In Moab, Sydney.
Now, obviously, we already know a lot. Like, obviously, this is months ago that this video, obviously, this news clip was made, right? And we already know that people have been calling. They are still trying to find more and more information. There are theories out here, like I said earlier. There are theories floating everywhere, right? Flying left and right, basically saying, oh, it's this is connected. Therefore this is connected. There's also stories of a man that escaped from an asylum, from a psych ward that was out in the mountains as well. There's so many different speculations, so many different stories that are floating around. We don't know. We don't know the full truth. Now, the thing is that, like I said before, we have the private investigator that will be on here with us, Jason Jensen. He will be on to talk with us live in Technicolor to talk about this whole thing. Find out what other information that they know that they have gathered revolving around this particular case. This case that is still not solved. Still up in the air, y'all. Still very much up in the air. We also will be having Kylen Schulte, Kylen's father himself, live on the show very, very shortly to talk about this and find out what information he knows. And what did Kylen talk to him beforehand? Was there anything that was said? Were there any pieces of maybe some clues that were said to him before she, of course, went missing for a little while there? And Penny Saxton, yes. Sean Paul will be on in about 5 minutes. I just want to let you guys know he will be on in about 5 minutes. But of course, more importantly, I wanted to get through this stuff so that you guys know a little bit of background. Okay, a little bit of background before we jump into the whole conversation. I know some of y'all already know everything, already know all this story because you've been watching this and watching the Gabby Petito case. And these were basically going side by side pretty much for a good while there. Gabby Petito just happened to be out in the forefront more than these two individuals. But of course, you can basically say, roughly, we still don't know what actually happened to Gabby Petito, but you could basically say that case is closed, sort of, to a certain extent, right? But right here, it says Crystal Turner and Kylen Schulte were still enjoying their first year of marriage and lived. They had only been married for a few months. Literally, they had only been married for a few months. And lived in the great outdoors. On August 13th, 2021, they went out for drinks with friends at a local bar called Woody's Tavern. That's important. That's an important piece of information because obviously it's an important piece of information, guys. So keep that Woody's Tavern in the back of your minds, okay? They tell their friends about a creepy guy who's been camping next to them. Then, of course, their bodies were found near their campsite almost a week later. And for a brief moment, the case was possibly linked to a high-profile missing persons case of Gabby Petito, which we already know that piece. But even with the increased attention, the killer remains unknown. Now, we know that these two were found basically half naked, and there were multiple gunshot wounds in their bodies. That's the information that we know. Now, here's the thing. We also know that Brian Laundrie killed himself with a gunshot wound to the head. So the question is, like I said, is there a connection? Is it the same gun that was used on these two women or not? Has there been forensics, ballistics done, any of that stuff? Is there any information that we know revolving around these two women's murders and Brian Laundrie? And is there a connection? Those are the pieces that we're waiting to hear, right? Those are the pieces of information that we are still waiting to find out and see what's going on. Man, it is this story is heart-wrenching. Obviously, I've been covering it for the past couple months. on a few shows and everything, because I felt like this is a story that was not getting a whole lot of attention I feel like it rightfully deserved. This is a story that needs to be out there. This is a case that needs to be solved. There's so many families that are deserving of justice, deserving of transparency, and deserving of the truth, instead of just a whole bunch of conspiracies, actual truths. The other question is law enforcement doing everything they can right now? Are they still doing are they doing anything at all? Are they doing anything at all right now? That is the question. And we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty right now. I'm very honored to have my brother on here, the father of Kylen Schulte. Please welcome Sean Paul Schulte to the show. How you doing, my brother?
Good morning, Pascal. How are you today?
I'm good. It's nice to see your face.
Let me shut this window.
Oh, you're good. It's nice to see your face. Honestly, in the interviews I've seen, you've only been on there vocally, just on audio or on the phone. So it's nice to see you face. It's nice to see your face and your voice behind that face. So
Thank you.
And I do appreciate you coming on, taking the time out of this is an early morning for you right now. I know you just had a long drive yesterday, but I appreciate you coming on and talking about this and just getting the story out about your daughter and your daughter's wife out here more. And so I do.
Right. The last 2 days, I took Kylen and Crystal's little brother and sister home. We had a nice Christmas visit. My little boy's birthday is this first week in January, so we had a little Christmas and birthday this weekend, and then I drove them. It's a whole day to drive them home, and then another day to drive back. So yeah, it was a great week spent with the littles. We did Christmas stuff. We did family stuff. We had fun. Finally, we had some fun. We went to the bouncy house. My little kids tried sushi for the first time ever. We had a little bit of fun this weekend.
That's good.
And opened some presents and visited, and then I brought them back home, and now it's time. I kind of shield them from this. I try to be honest and upfront and tell them what's going on, but I try to shield them from the 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day that I'm putting into this. So they don't see that. But it's hours and hours and hours of research, studying leads, chasing down leads. If we get a good lead, then I call Jason. If we get a great lead, then we call law enforcement, and we fill them in on that. And we try to get them on board with the leads that we're reeling in. I would say myself, if you included the clue booth, where I was set up in Moab for a month, taking in clues from the town folks, real clues from real people, local folks that were, telling me real clues. I probably, between that and over the last few months, I've probably sent 50 clues into authorities, literally 50 different names of different clues. And they're trying to, take those names off the list as we go. I'm really glad they took a couple of them off of the list for me. They have not been forthcoming on information. It's a one-way street with law enforcement. The info goes in, it does not come out. So as people around the world are trying to web sleuth and help us out, they have to understand. Jason Jensen, my private investigator, and I, we don't have DNA. We don't have fingerprints. We don't have the luxury of the evidence that the pros have out there. We only have the evidence that we've taken in ourselves, which is mainly in the form of tips. People calling in, people coming to see me in person at the park, and people telling us, I saw this guy do this, or that guy did that, or this guy's really weird, or this guy cut off all of his hair. This guy stole my gun. I mean, so many different tips over the last but we've been kind of weeding through them and picking some of them off and trying to weed some of them out. Just like with Brian and Gabby, Brian Laundrie's probably the biggest name that kind of came through all of this. But then there's this John Jason Freeman Colt guy, another huge name. And believe it or not, there's 20 or 30 other bad guys that all have kind of crossed paths in our Moab area during the time of the crime.
Now, I know that, and we are going to get to John Jacob and the Brian Laundrie theories and all that.
You bet.
We are going to get there.
Jason will be able to help us with that.
Of course. And I look forward to having him on here shortly as well. But yeah. I wanted to get kind of down to like you were talking about, you said the littles, right? Your other kids and all that.
Sure.
I wanted to kind of go into a little bit of this first before we go into all this into the more of the nitty gritty. But how are the kids doing? How are they dealing?
They're doing okay. I mean, Kylen's older brother is very upset because him and I have been estranged for years. It wasn't till a few years back that we actually met and kind of fell in love and were able to build a relationship. And so my oldest son only got to spend very short amounts of time with Kylen before she was taken from us. And he's older, and so he has his own opinions, and he's mad. He's really mad.
Mm.
And the little ones, they're 12 and 14. Okay, and little Z's birthday is just in a couple of days, so he'll be 13. He's going to be a teenager. They're actually adjusted a little better because, how should I say this? We had two separate families. I had Kylen and Mac, and then I had Marlo and Xander separate with different ladies. And unfortunately, in the structure of our family, Marlo and Xander are used to not being around Kylen and Mac. Now, I don't know if you know this or if everybody already knows this or not, but Mackie Boy was taken away from us almost 7 years ago by gun violence as well. Him and a friend had snuck out of the house and were knocking on their friend's window, trying to wake him up to come out and play. And the kid woke up scared, didn't know who it was. He had a gun under his pillow, and unfortunately, he thought it was bad guys, and he shot Mackie point blank through his bedroom window, and we lost Mackie. So now that sets up the littles for having to go through that, okay? And they were tiny back then. And now they're having to go through this, and it's kind of like me. Unfortunately, I'm already rehearsed for how to lose a child. I know that sounds crazy, but if I had followed the path this time that I followed when I lost Mackie Boy, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. I'd still be stuffed up in a teepee for 6 months, unapproachable. So unfortunately, I learned how to deal with losing a child 7 years ago. I never thought it would happen again. I certainly never thought it would be a double homicide, because Crystal I've taken in as my own child as well. So now somewhere built in here now are the abilities to be able to deal with this. Don't ask me how. But the way I seem to do it is by facing it right up front every day. I don't drink. Thank God I don't drink, because I probably would have got drunk and drove my car off a bridge or something, but I don't drink. It's been over 20 years since I've had a drink. So sobriety has helped me deal with this. And then just the fact that I've gone through it before. So now I'm able to process this by keeping it at the forefront of my mind and dealing with it every day. Every single morning, the first thing that happens when I wake up is bam, it's right at the forefront of my thoughts. So I might get my tears and my aggression and my anger out right away. And by the time I've had a cup of coffee, I'm kind of able to go back into my day and work through it. In the little kids, because of their distance from their older brother and sister, and the fact that they've already gone through this before, unfortunately, our family is kind of pre-programmed to be able to deal with death,
with loss.
and it's certainly in loss and the gravity and the grief that comes with it too.
Yeah.
And so actually, this is the long version of your question.
It's okay.
Marlo and Xander are actually pretty well adjusted. They're very removed from all the hype and the publicity and the news and all of that. I remember when we went on a field trip with Marlo a couple months ago, and her teacher didn't even know. They didn't even know, because they're in such a remote area, and they have their things that they do, their Girl Scout meetings and their field trips where they go to art museums and this and that. When we stopped to give Marlo a couple of care package gifts when she came through to see that museum, I had accidentally let something about the case slip out, and I saw my little girl look at me funny, and I realized that her teacher and her classmates weren't as keen to what had happened as, of course, I am. And that kind of set me back a little bit, but it made me think, this is how she's dealing with it. And the little boy, my little boy Z-Man, he plays a lot of video games.
Yeah.
He gets whatever games he wants, and controllers and packs and all these remotes and keyboards and stuff. And he's online playing virtual chess with people from all around the world, and he's kind of in his realm,
yeah,
in his bubble kind of, and they're really quite removed from the mainstream they're in a very sparsely populated part in the middle of nowhere in eastern Montana. So in a way that's kind of good, but yeah, I deal with it at the forefront of my mind every day. Willie boy, my oldest, is pretty mad. And the two little ones are just plowing through life and trying to adjust and trying to move forward, and have friends and do projects. And Marlo's artwork is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where the kids are,
Yeah. But that's, in a way, it's good that they're expressing their feelings through, creatively. They're trying to use their art or their own way of expression as an outlet, instead of it just.
Marlo had this beautiful painting that Marlo did, and she said, "Daddy, what do you see?" And I said, "I don't know, it looks like shooting stars, snowflakes, seagulls."
Yeah.
And then I noticed in the very bottom, in a little tiny print, it said, "I wish you were back here." And it made me realize that Marlo is processing some of this through her art.
Yeah. I mean, as long as they're able to, talk about it and not keep it all bottled up, right?
Yeah. Well, when they're with me, I open up all avenues of communication. I'll give you an example. Like on the 1st, just now, Montana legalized marijuana. What's it called? Recreational now, not just medical. And so here we are at Christmas, and I'm having a chat with two littles about how this is going to affect the community and what they could expect and what they might encounter with their friends and at parties at later on in life and at college and stuff. How this is going to come into play. And so we talk about that.
Yeah.
And then we also spoke about, Marlo said, well, Xander's going into health class this year, so he's going to be learning about sex ed. And then this all comes up and we talk about this
that's a whole
for a little while. you know, but as a dad, we're talking about these things, and there's an open communication between me and all of my kids. So yeah,
Right. And thank God that there is that. You know what I mean? Thank God
right.
that you kind of
Yeah.
have that relationship with your kids, because there's a lot of kids out here that deal with grief by themselves, and it can be a lonesome and very lonely uh uh journey, and it can lead towards other vices, and can go down a
Yep.
very negative path. So thank God you kids
100%.
are able to talk together. But I got to ask you though, let's talk about Kylen, right? Let's
Okay.
talk about Kylen. Let's talk about Crystal. Um,
Okay.
but mainly, let's talk about Crystal for a second, because my thing is and it might be a little backwards, and I don't mean to be backwards here, but
That's fine.
the thing is that I noticed that there's a lot of conversation about Kylen, but there's not a whole lot of conversation about Crystal. And so I have to ask you, when you first time you met Crystal, what was that like? How was Crystal when you met?
Oh my goodness. Crystal is really something. So Kylen, you know, we suffered the loss of Mackie Boy, and then about a year later, Kylen moved to Moab to be with me and get out of the house that she was abused in as a child. She was old enough and grown up enough, and Mackie was gone, and she didn't want to stay there to protect him anymore. So she flew to Moab, and she came to Moab. There she blossomed greatly, and Kylen and I were on hike, and we were up in this little canyon, slot canyon, behind the Bow Falls, the waterfall that fills up Ken's Lake above Moab there. And we were hiking up the hill, and we heard some voices. We heard some people coming. And so I just said, you know, these guys are probably going to pass us, so let's just step to the side and we'll watch them go by. And we stepped to the side, and these two girls came up hiking up the Red Rocks with a kitty cat. We were really set back. We were like, what are they doing? And these two girls went by, and I heard Crystal telling the other girl, with that Spitfire pistol attitude of hers that she's always had, was saying something like, oh yeah, well, let me tell you how it really was. And they were just talking and going by, hiking past us. Well, I looked over at my daughter, and a light bulb came on over Kylen's head, and I could see the gears turning in her little brain. And she said, inside her head, I could hear her telling herself, oh my God, those girls can do whatever they want. They can go wherever they want. They can say whatever they want. Look how freely they're communicating with each other and hiking by with this goofy kitty cat. And it's funny because about 2 months later, Kylen came to me and she said, Daddy, guess who I met? And I said, who? And she said, her name's Crystal. She's that little girl that was hiking past us with the kitty cat. And I said, no way. The one with like the Southern accent who's like, oh yeah, y'all, I'll tell you all how it was, you know. And she said, yeah. I said, well, how did you meet her? And she said, well, now we're both breakfast cooks at the hotel where they do the little free breakfast in the morning. And so I don't know, I guess maybe 4 years ago, 3.5, I'm going to say 4 years ago, they worked together at the hotel. And, you know, they made the eggs and the sausage and cleaned up the tables and all that stuff. And they worked together, and they really had a super great friendship. Now, I'm going to give you a little hint into the future, which was when Kylen told me, Daddy, this is the first time I've ever been friends with someone before I was in a relationship with them. And I said, Kylen, that's what you're supposed to do. That's how it's supposed to work. You and Crystal have a beautiful friendship that you've formed and built this relationship from the ground up, with communicating and being fun and loving each other and working with each other and laughing with each other. And they were friends. Kylen was dating the manager of the hotel, of a man at the time.
Interesting.
Kylen had never been with a girl before.
I was just going to ask you if she was out before.
No. Now, Crystal had been married before and had kids before with a man, and then later on had decided that she was going to be lesbian, going to be gay. Kylen hadn't. Kylen was still heterosexual, but after being friends with Crystal for so long and having such a great bond together, at some point, Crystal must have told her, I could do things that a man can't do. You and I know what a woman wants or whatever,
Right.
And Kylen, in some probably experimental phase, had broken up with her boyfriend at the time and was now thinking that maybe she would want to get in a relationship with Crystal.
Right.
And then
Fireworks.
Just unbelievable fireworks. I mean, oh my God, these girls were, and there's nothing would tear them apart. Nothing.
That's beautiful.
And they had both gone through trauma and abuse in their life, and they had both gone through boyfriends and troubles in their life, and they'd both experienced and seen drug abuse and sex abuse and some horrible things in their younger lives. And when they met, it was just kapow.
Right.
And it was amazing. And so then for the next 2 or 3 years, we saw their relationship blossom into something that I had never seen before. I mean, the only thing I could compare it to would be my parents, who have still been together for, hell, I'm 53, so almost 60 years. And so, I mean, that kind of a relationship that you don't see very often, or a relationship when you see it, right, and when you see it as a bystander and you're observing these girls, many people said, oh man, I wish I had that in my life, or hey, that gives me hope that maybe I can have that kind of love in my future.
Yeah.
And so without even trying, the girls rubbed off on everyone that they ran into, the whole community. If you ask someone in Moab, what do you think of them girls, or did you know them girls? They would have to laugh. They would have to chuckle and say, yeah, when them girls rode by on the motorcycle, it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. Crystal's head was down here and Kylen's head was a foot taller. So just picture Crystal on the front driving and Kylen's on the back.
Yeah.
And if you were looking from behind them, you wouldn't even see Crystal. She was just buried inside of Kylen. And Kylen's head's looking over the top. It was just the funniest thing you've ever seen.
Sounds amazing.
And the whole town would hear the motorcycle and look at the girls, and the little tiny blonde one was in the front, and the big tall one with the dreadlocks and the beautiful eyes and stuff was hugging her and holding her. And oh man, when you saw them at Albertsons, you'd just laugh, because at Albertsons they'd rather go into the flower department and buy flowers than go buy groceries. I mean, they really were just a super wonderful, loving relationship. And they didn't try. They were not putting on a show for anyone else. They were in their own little bubble of love, but it shone so bright that everyone in the whole town would tell you the same thing. These girls were amazing. The love they shared was 1 in a million. It was old-fashioned true love.
That's beautiful. That's absolutely really, really beautiful. But real quick, how did you like? Obviously, you were there for the wedding. But before the wedding, did they? You say it's old-fashioned, like we just talked about old-fashioned love. Were they old-fashioned with asking for your permission in her hand?
They sure were. They sure were. Little Chris was like a little groom, and Kylen was like this beautiful bride. And little Chris came to me and she said, well, wait now. let me go back. Okay. I came home from Phoenix one winter because I would winter in Phoenix and play frisbee golf down there. Then I could play disc golf all year round. I was trying to become a pro at the time. I won a couple of 50+ tournaments at the time. I was working on my putting and trying to become a pro senior golf tour. And I came back to Moab, and Kylen pulled me aside. It was so funny. And she goes, Daddy, I just wanted you to know that me and Crystal are together. And without missing a beat, I looked at her and I said, you mean lovers, right? And she got red in the face and she jumped up, and as she was walking away from me, she said, it is what it is. And as she's walking away from me, I hollered over to her, I knew before you did. And she kind of chuckled and laughed and came back towards me and said, what do you mean? And I said, I knew your girls loved each other 2-3 years ago. Who are you kidding? I said, I'm happy for you girls. I'm very happy to see this kind of love in one of my child's eyes, you know.
Of course.
And so what she thought was going to be kind of a scary thing to tell her dad, something like that, was just a beautiful moment that we shared, you know.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really, really amazing. And you know, that's what we all want as parents. You know, I'm not a parent, of course, but I mean that's what we want. The that they find love, they find that good love, that old fashioned love, and that person's going to take care of them, right?
Oh boy, did Crystal ever take care of Kylen. It was interesting. Crystal really took the role of the groom. Kylen really took the role of the bride. Crystal was the protector, the guardian, workaholic, badass, tough little sawed-off firecracker. Kylen was the tall, beautiful, blooming flower that, you know, guys couldn't take their eyes off of. I mean, I know that sales went up at the Moonflower when Kylen started there, and it was kind of funny because guys in their 20s and 30s would come in and come up to the till where Kylen was, and they couldn't talk to her. They were like, up. I mean, her beauty was just to blow you away. You know, it was like you're standing there looking at Gina Davis.
Right.
And so Kylen and Crystal had a relationship where Crystal definitely was the protector and the guardian and the, you know, yeah, for sure.
That's no, and it's beautiful, you know, and I like I said, it's such a beautiful
the whole story's amazing except for the end. The whole story is a phenomenal love story. Well, you know, I mean, people who like to something like a Romeo and Juliet story might appreciate this. Certainly I don't as the father, but I mean, to see that kind of love was amazing.
Yeah, it's rare. And now in this day and age, it is very, very rare to see that kind of love, right?
If you polled everyone in Moab, you'd have 3,000 people tell you that the most in love I've ever seen anyone was Kylen and Crystal.
That's dope. That's really, really dope. And of course, it turned to tragedy, of course. And of course, we got to go into that conversation really quick because I know we do have Jason Jensen, the private investigator here, just waiting at the helm here. So I want to bring him on here shortly.
Yeah, he's supposed to come on at 9 or shortly after 9.
Yes. But so I do have to ask you about this. We got to get into the tragic part of the story. You know, don't
tenderfoot it. I'm used to it now. Unfortunately, now I'm like an investigator and I'm a little bit hardened and leathered. So go ahead, ask away.
Okay. So I do have to ask you, where were you when, you know, you started hearing that your daughter was missing, that these two were missing?
Oh, okay. So I had moved back to my hometown in Helena, Montana. And I was living in Helena, and on Facebook, I saw something about the girls that I thought was odd. And then I got a phone call from the girl that works at the front till with Kylen at the grocery store, one of her best friends and workmates, who said, Sean Paul, Kylen and Crystal are missing. And I'm like, I know, I'm seeing something like they can't find her. I'd been sending him text messages, girls, where are you? And she said that she missed a shift. And I was like, what do you mean she missed a shift? A no call, no show? That's not like our girls. Our girls would never do it. I mean, if they missed a shift, they would let their boss know 2 days ahead of time that they weren't
responsible. They were responsible individuals, right?
They would not miss a shift. Okay,
Right.
so that was a huge red flag. And then she said to me that not only had Kylen missed a shift, but Crystal also had missed a no call, no show at McDonald's. And I was like, wait a minute. Both girls have had a no call, no show. What's going on? They must really be missing. And so right away I started thinking, well, these goofy girls, they've done quite a few adventures. Either they're off to California to buy a van. One time they went all the way to California to buy a van without telling me. But they showed back up with a van, and I was like, where did you get that? And they said, California. And I was like, oh my God, really? Yeah. So I'm like, oh, they're off on one of their adventures, and who knows when we're going to see them again.
Right.
And that was initially. Now, when the shifts were missed, then the red flags came out.
Right. Now, and then, of course, because I do have to ask, because obviously when it comes to they were missing, there was a missing persons that was filed.
Well, wait a minute. Now, don't get that wrong, Pascal.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I called the police and I tried to report a missing persons, and they said, no, we have an attempt to locate on the girls. And I said, I don't know what your job is. I don't know what you're talking about, but you're the authorities. And if you're telling me you have an attempt to locate, then that sounds to me like you're trying to locate my girls. And if it doesn't qualify as a missing persons because they're adults, and see, it's not like children were missing. It's not like kids were abducted. It's not like when a child is abducted and all of our phones go off and we all see the Amber Alert and these kids are missing and you have to take immediate action. Right. It wasn't like that at all. It took forever. It went from a couple of hippie girls that haven't been around for 2 days to a couple of really good workers that missed no call, no shows.
Right.
To a dad frantically posting on Facebook, to my friends in Moab, who I have big burly men who I called out 3 of my biggest, toughest boys and said, please go up on the mountain and find my girls.
But hold on, can we backtrack just a tiny bit? Because you said it was I forgot what the phrase was. You said it was a locate. What was the phrase? Attempt to locate.
ATL, attempt to locate.
Okay, so an attempt to locate, why was that being issued instead of it being an actual missing persons report? Did they tell you any reason behind that?
No, the only thing I could conclude was because they were adults and they were only missing for a couple of days, and who knows where they could have. It's not like an abduction. It's not like a child was abducted. It's 2 adults are missing, and they could be missing on their own accord. They could have just pulled up, packed up, and drove to Arkansas to move to Crystal's mom's house. The authorities have no reason to expect foul play until McDonald's and Moonflower said they missed shifts. Then they called me and said they missed shifts. And then I started blowing it up on Facebook that we got to find my girls. They don't miss shifts.
Yeah.
And an attempt to locate, I believe what an attempt to locate is, this is what I think the difference is.
Okay.
As a patrolman is out cruising around doing his job, if he just so happens to see the girl's vehicle or the girl's van, he will go pull them over and say, hey, are you girls okay? People are looking for you. But they're not going to get in their cruisers and go all over the place looking for the girls specifically.
Right.
If they see them, if they see them by chance, they'll say, hey, we see the girls. But I don't think they went out of their way to go look for the girls.
So how long did it take them to actually go from a ATL or a attempt to locate to an actual missing persons search? Because it seems very strange that
Pascal, I don't know the answer to that. And honestly, if I were to guess, I would believe that it never did go into a missing person status.
Interesting.
Cindy Sue found the girls.
Which is right where I'm going to get to right now. So
I was on the phone with her at the time.
But
go ahead.
Before the actual search and of Cindy Sue Hunter finding the two girls, obviously their bodies and everything. Before that, the cops, law enforcement just stopped. It sounds like they just stopped searching. They weren't.
I don't think.
Really. So
I don't think. This is what they told me. They told me that some of their friends said they were camped up at Warner Lake, and they sent one of the sheriff's trucks up to Warner Lake to attempt to locate the girls. When they went up to Warner Lake, they looked around Warner Lake and the campground at Warner Lake. The problem I have with that is the girls never stayed at a fee campground. They would not pay $15 to camp around a whole bunch of other people.
Right.
When they knew the whole mountain. They knew the whole mountain. They could go camp in dispersed camping and have privacy, and it would be free. So when the sheriffs went up to Warner Lake, you got to picture this too, Pascal. They go up to Warner Lake, and when they come down from Warner Lake Road, they're a half a mile from the girls, right here, at the bottom of that road. They just missed the girls by a squeak. Had they turned right, and then looked to their left, they would have found the girls.
They didn't even bother
But
to go.
they went up to Warner Lake, and then who knows? They went back to town. I don't know.
It's
but
so
they
strange.
did tell me.
Yeah, and I understand.
Did tell me they sent a truck up to Warner Lake, and I said, well, that was a mistake. They would never camp at a campground. You have to look at Pat Creek, you have to look at Elk Camp, and you have to look at the top of Sand Flats Road. That's where the girls camp.
Yes, and then so it's interesting that the law enforcement did what they did, and then all of a sudden they just kind of wiped their hands clean of this and moved on. So moving to Cindy Sue Hunter, the wonderful friend of yours that went out of her way, or an acquaintance of you and of Kylen's, went out of her way to go on this search. Now, what was that dialogue like? She
wasn't alone, Pascal. She wasn't alone. Some other people went to look as well.
Okay.
One of my buddies, two of my buddies were up on the mountain scouring the area looking. A couple of Kylen and Crystal's friends. One of them who was even pregnant. I mean, she was on maternity leave. She was ready to have a baby, was going up on the mountain to find the girls. And her friend's husband said, not without me, you're not. It's too scary. And they waited for him to get off shift. And then those three drove up on the mountain to look for the girls.
All of them.
Kind of like everybody was looking for the girls except for the sheriff.
I just don't get it. Now I get it. The part of they're adults. Maybe they just went off to do their own thing, kind of thing. They'll turn up in the next couple of days, so on and so forth. I get that theory, but the fact that there was no full search, that they didn't do their due diligence, they didn't do a deep dive and just look in the area. The fact that Cindy Sue Hunter and the other group of people were able to find your daughter and her wife within hours.
The other interesting thing,
it's so strange to me, though, that just
it's pretty interesting that Cindy Sue found them right off the paved road.
It was right there.
Elk Camp is one that, if I was standing on the paved road and I was looking over to Forestry Road 4651, I could hey girls, you want to come down to town and go eat? I mean, they were right there. They were right off the paved road. Okay.
Yeah.
Cindy Sue saw them out of the corner of her eye. But I got to tell you, Pascal, Cindy Sue didn't go up there and find them in 5-10 minutes. Cindy Sue went up there, and this is an elderly woman who's not very mobile.
Right.
She's older. She has some pains. She brought her 4 little puppy doggies with her, and she went up the hill. But here's the thing. She went up Pack Creek Road and questioned everyone she saw and showed them pictures. She went up Ooh-Ah Road and questioned everyone she saw and showed them pictures.
Right.
She went up Warner Lake Road and she questioned everyone she saw and she took pictures, showed them pictures. But here's the key. When Cindy Sue came down the mountain, she didn't take a left and go back to town. When Cindy Sue came down Warner Lake Road, she still turned right and kept looking after 5 hours of searching, maybe even 6. She turned right. Now, I was on the phone with her at the time, and I said, Cindy Sue, just to let you know, one of the girls said that there was a creeper and that if we didn't come to work, we were murdered. And Cindy Sue was like, oh my God, okay, well, that's a little bit scary. And then she goes, hey, hold on, I see a silver car. I was like, what? Where? And she says, just off the left of the road. Hold on, I'm going down she turned left on Forestry Road 4651. And then she turned left on a little tiny dirt car trail. And then she said, oh my God, I see the girl's car. And I started screaming, are you serious? Are you serious? And she said, yes. And she pulled in and she said, I said, is it them? Do you know it's them? Are the girls there? And she said, I know it for sure. It's the girls. I see the bunny rabbit in the cage.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're 100% positive she found the girl's car. There's the bunny rabbit. She says, hold on a second. I'm going to go and look. She took 3 or 4 steps and then she just lost it. She said, oh my God, there's a body. Now I'm on the floor at my house and Helena pounding on the floor saying, no, no, no. I says, is it Kylen and Crystal? She says, it looks like Kylen. And all of a sudden I said, holy shit, Cindy Sue, get the F out of there. What if the bad guy is still there? You got to get in your car, lock the door, drive to the end of the road and call 911. And she's like, okay, yeah, you're right. So she gets in her car, locks the door and drives what would be like 500 feet to get back to the paved part, turns on her flashers, hangs up with me, calls 911. She's on the phone about 15 minutes. I call her back. She answers. I says, are they there? Are they there? And she says, no, they're not here. Just one guy driving by in his car. And he didn't stop to help me. Decline that phone call. He didn't stop to help me. He kind of slowed down and saw me crying with my flashers and then just kept going. I was like, well, he might have been. I said, wait a minute, what's his license plate number? And she said, oh, I didn't even think to look. So anyway, she did see a guy go by in a small car with a white guy with dark hair, but he had like tinted windows and a small car. And he didn't stop to help a lady on the side of the road who was crying with her flashers on, frantically waiting for the police. So we hung up again and I called her and it was an hour later. And she said, no, they're not here yet. And I'm like, oh my God, Cindy Sue, that means they're not up on the mountain looking for the girls. They're in town. They're responding from the police station coming up to the mountain. So and then they came and then they looked and they found Crystal. And then they let Cindy Sue take the bunny rabbit down the hill with her. She followed the sheriff down the hill. When they got down at the bottom of the hill was where their other friends that were coming up to look at them were stopped by kind of like a police barricade who was checking everyone coming and going at the time. And then boy, then honestly, I couldn't tell you what happened. I mean, I don't even know what happened at that point.
Yeah, I can only imagine what you went through, and of course what Cindy Sue Hunter went through, because obviously she saw firsthand, at least Crystal's body first.
No, she never saw Crystal.
Oh, she saw Kylen's body first. Okay.
She saw Kylen because Kylen was bigger, Kylen was closer, and Kylen's was not like submerged in the little creek. She was bigger and you could see her. Crystal apparently was further, as if the girls had ran and Crystal made it further around a bush, where it wasn't until the sheriff went around the corner that he indicated that he found the second girl to the other sheriff. He didn't say that to Cindy, but she saw him tell the other sheriff that he found the other girl around the corner.
Of course.
And so now the crime scene was odd because the girls were partially clothed,
Right.
but that could have been how they went to bed.
Now, of course, we're gonna get into the crime scene and all that, of course, here very shortly. I wanted to bring on, of course, your private investigator.
Good, because Jason can answer more of the technical questions. I can handle more of the family stuff. Let's let him handle the technical stuff.
So we're going to bring him on right now. So please welcome private investigator Jason Jensen to the show. Hello. Good morning, my brother. Thank you so much for being on.
Good morning.
So first off, just so everybody knows, you are a private investigator and you are currently covering this case. You are currently covering and trying to find who did this, what's going on, and bring this person to justice for Kylen and Crystal, correct?
Yes, I'm the only licensed private investigator in Utah working on this case.
Now, what's very interesting to me is the information that has been floating around out here as of late, right? There's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of theories. There's a lot of conspiracies. There's a lot of rumors that have been floating around as well. And I'm hoping that with both of you guys on here, on the show today, we can hopefully confirm, debunk, deny some of these conspiracies, some of these conspiracies, and some of these theories that are floating out here on the internets, right? So tell me, Jason, what do you know right now revolving around this particular case?
Well, that's actually a difficult question to answer because we have such a high social media attention and involvement that it's really hard to give too many breadcrumbs, because it really turns into an onslaught against either potential witnesses or persons of interest, which is not really wise because it can interfere with what law enforcement are trying to do.
Okay, let's talk about law enforcement then, shall we? All right. Are they really doing what they need to do? Are they really showing up and doing their due diligence revolving around this case? Because right now, from what we know so far, it seems a little lackluster. You've been brought in, right, to be a private investigator into this whole situation. Is Moab law enforcement really doing their job?
They have the assistance of the FBI working on the technical, the lab-related kind of issues. And that is where the case really stands right now. Remember, the crime scene had already been processed and cleared. Any evidence was collected. And we want the FBI to go through the evidence and look for prints or DNA or something that's going to tie back to the bad guy here. So I feel they're doing exactly what they have to do at this point. Now, yeah, there was discussion about them slow getting started and doing the ATL instead of a missing persons search, but that's standard nowadays. And everybody complains about that typically. And the reason is...
And let's get it straight. I agree with Jason also that they have been busting their butt to try to solve this case.
I was just going to ask you that.
But the public doesn't see it, Pascal. The public doesn't see that because they don't get answers. The public wants to know forensics. Well, they're not going to give us or anybody forensics, so they don't feel like they're being involved. They are. They're just holding all that information close to the vest.
Right, and they're less likely to share something because they don't know if they can rely on the information not getting out to the public because there's so much attention. And we know that there's groups out there that are working for family members, and I'm sure they question whether or not it's safe to give that information to family members if they're going to hear about it in social media 2 days later.
And they told that to me as well. They said that they know how much of a social media presence myself, my sister, and my mom have. So we're the last people they want to tell information because it'll be blasted all over the internet.
Right. And I
So
get
what,
it.
what I feel comfortable us discussing is things up to this point.
Okay.
Not discussing present
Totally understand.
investigations, and you know, we can debunk theory and stuff like that because that'll help. That'll help fine tune the investigation and direct social media where to look next, so they're actually useful.
Right. And I totally understand that. I understand that there's information you can't really give out right now because of this ongoing investigation. You don't want people to just leave town suddenly or pull a Brian Laundrie and just go off into some swamp or some deserted area if you got some information that you maybe want to bring that particular person of interest in for questioning. So I totally understand that piece. I totally understand that.
But if somebody flees, if somebody leaves the area suddenly, that's going to bring suspicion on them. So I wouldn't really mind that at all, Pascal. I wouldn't mind someone accidentally putting the spotlight on themselves by packing up and leaving.
That's a good point too there too.
Right. Well, what that's referred to as consciousness of guilt, and prosecutors like to use that kind of information. You know, like tampering with a witness, making threats, bribes, fleeing the jurisdiction, leaving the country, destroying evidence. Those things are all helpful, but leaving the area is not helpful if it's for other reasons, like, you know, they got a job offer, or in things that I've seen in this scenario is they may even leave because they're afraid of being falsely accused, because the internet sleuths and the mob have been so relentless against certain people that they've left or they've shaved off all their hair. So you don't know if it's out of consciousness of guilt or the fear of being falsely accused.
Right. And that's a very good point here too. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about the crime scene, right? What kind of information can you give out right now that is known about this particular crime scene?
Right. The only safe information that we can talk about is what's already been publicly shared already, and that is, you know, we have 2 victims. It was at a campsite. It was rural, actually wilderness. And that they found 9mm shells on the ground. So we know the weapon type. And in many scenarios, the bad guy doesn't keep their weapon. They dispose of it. They either destroy it, discard it. Dumping a gun in a river is not uncommon. And, with the Colorado there, maybe that's where or in the desert, you can get rid of weapons or any other crime scene evidence out in the desert by burying it or whatnot. So that can happen. But given the fact that we know the weapon type and we know that there was conversation from the victims leading up to this incident, that there was a creepy guy, that he just came back with, it sounds like he had groceries and more clothing, that led the girls to mention that they were going to move, and they were last seen near midnight on August 13th, which was a Friday night, and they were going back to camp. So it takes about a half hour to an hour to get there, depending on if there's a stop or anything like that for gas or whatnot. Then, so we can speculate they got back to camp about 1 a.m. And so the question is, when from 1 a.m. Saturday, August 14th in the morning to the 18th when they were discovered, did this crime occur? And, a lot of this kind of analysis becomes by process of elimination or evidence-based theory. And what we know is that they told their friends that they visited at midnight on Friday the 13th was that we'll be back tomorrow, and this friend was going to make them dinner and they were going to, socialize a little bit that following night after they moved, and they never showed up. So that leads one to believe that the murder happened before they would have come down on the 14th, but more likely, shortly after they arrived, because we believe that the clothing that they were found in, T-shirts and whatnot, wasn't because they were victims of a sexual assault on like Saturday afternoon, but they were pulled out of their camp in their bedroom attire, and that's why they were clothed the way they were. Now, it doesn't mean they weren't sexually assaulted, but we believe that's why they were wearing a T-shirt and whatnot. It's my understanding there's no evidence that, clothing was ripped or anything like that. Cindy Sue Hunter didn't see anything like that. Or she might have said something.
Was there a rape kit used at all?
Well, it's standard protocol. We don't know for sure because that kind of intimate information from the crime lab would not be shared with us.
Gotcha.
But we hope. It's sad to think that we want somebody to be a rape victim in order to solve their murder, but oftentimes you want that kind of evidence. So whether it be DNA from nail clippings or DNA from other sources like semen, we'll take it because that means this guy's going to jail.
Right. Understandably. Now, of course, we already know that the gun was not there. The weapon was not discarded anywhere near the crime scene, correct?
That is correct. But we do know with modern technology, people have cell phones and and tablets and things like that. So we also know from the released warrant from the Grand County Sheriff's Office that they were also looking for tower dump data. We subsequently, after that information became public, we asked Grand County to expand their warrant request to include a couple days earlier than the date range that they were requesting, because we believe that this fellow was at their camp 2 days before the murder. So from like the 11th or the 12th, because we know that there was observation that this guy had returned. Okay, that's key there, that he returned with clothing and food. And given the fact that Kylen and Crystal didn't have a working cell phone, that they used Wi-Fi only on their phone, that for any conversations about this guy in person or over Wi-Fi happened after they returned to town. So they didn't have this opportunity to see this guy return on the 13th because they were in town. They would have seen this guy return either on the 12th or maybe even the 11th.
Gotcha. This quote unquote creepy guy.
Right. And we have every reason to believe that this creepy guy is the murderer, because it'd be too much of a coincidence to assume one guy freaked you out, but it was a completely unrelated matter that someone else was your murderer.
Right.
I believe it was the creeper.
Yeah, it doesn't seem mathematically possible that we're talking two distinctly different individuals. We believe that this creepy guy, and it's also been mentioned what was it that was creepy about him. It's been brought out already that it was because of his conduct, not his look. Early on, people were like, this guy looks creepy, this guy might have been it, or this guy, whatever. It's like circus acts are circus acts. Here we're looking at suspects. And what made this guy creepy was his conduct, that the night before, which was one of the reasons why they wanted to move, was so on the 12th, the evening of the 12th, this guy creeped through their camp, past their fire, past their tent.
So Jason,
these two saw this guy and it creeped them out.
So Jason, real quick, just so we can get it, let's nip this in the bud, shall we? There have been theories, conspiracies, the rumors ruminating all over the place, right? About Brian Laundrie.
Right.
And of course, we got to get into the conversation about Brian Laundrie, and I want to see if we can debunk it or confirm it or whatever.
Right.
know
Hold
that
on
there's
one
some
second. Hold on one second. I'm at home to make this happen, so I have a dog that's begging to go outside. One
Oh,
moment, please.
sure.
Okay. And can you hear me, Pascal?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So, on the subject of Brian Laundrie, okay, the nuts and the bolts, the bottom line it is, I want to know what caliber of weapon he possibly killed himself with,
Exactly.
and if there's any confession in that notebook.
Exactly.
Now, it's not because I necessarily think that he had the time and ability to get a car, go up there, find the girls, kill the girls. It's because that's when I need to rule him out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the law enforcement may already have DNA, fingerprints, ballistics, all of that, but we don't have the luxury of any of that. We do know it was a 9mm.
What makes them hold that stuff back then? Why would law enforcement hold that information back so long if it has any connection with Brian Laundrie? Let's just say that. If there is connection with Brian Laundrie, hold on, let me bring Jason back on here. If there's connection, that's okay. It's okay. I got dogs too, so I understand the feeling. And they'll never stop talking, right? They'll never stop yapping. So until they get what they want. But here it is. When it comes to Brian Laundrie, I just heard from Sean Paul, his particular opinion. When it comes to, I just kind of want to take a few steps backwards here, because you say that on the 12th there was a quote unquote creepy guy that was walking around and creeping out the two young women, right? The married couple.
They
right?
said that they saw him.
They saw a creepy guy. Now
they were in their hammock and they saw him walk through their camp.
Right. So walk through the camp. And this is one individual. So it may not have been Brian Laundrie at all, because if we have the timeline correct, around that same time, they're having arguments and getting pulled over by the police, if I'm correct, right? So how would he still be the creepy guy walking through the campsite if he's dealing with 5-0 on the side of the road with that infamous body cam footage? Jason, do you mind putting in your opinion on that one?
Right. There's a couple of issues about the girls' conversation that excludes Brian Laundrie, and that is, number one, they said he returned in a car. Okay, these ladies owned a motorcycle and a van and a SUV. They're going to know the difference between a car and a bike and a van because they're worldly that way. There's no way that they'd call Brian Laundrie's van a car knowingly, So the description of the creepy guy's vehicle is wrong. And then the other thing that they have to consider is there's no discussion about his cute girlfriend or anything like that. So this is a single individual, not a couple. So you have to use the evidence. You can't make this square peg fit a round hole, no matter how much you want it. Sometimes in the world there are coincidences, and here we've got 350 million Americans. At some point or another, you're going to run into a serial killer, or you're going to pass him at the grocery store. Doesn't mean you're going to become his victim.
That is very, very true. You got a point there. Now, when it comes to forensics, when it comes to ballistics, when it comes to those bullets, obviously Brian Laundrie, because when you went off, Sean Paul said that he would want to know, like, if there was a match between the gun that Brian Laundrie used to kill himself and the bullets that were actually used to kill these two women.
And what was in the notebook, if there was possibly a confession.
Of course.
Right.
But when it comes to the bullets, what are your thoughts on that?
Right. I mean, you're dealing with two separate crime scenes. You're talking about the murder of two ladies in Moab. At the same time, you're talking a death scene in Florida, and there's rumor that guy may have some connection here to Moab. So naturally, the conversation would be in those law enforcement circles is compare the ballistics, compare the gauge or the caliber of the weapon used, find the gun if it's there, and see if there's some real forensic connection between the two. Obviously, if they know that Brian Laundrie was killed with like a Glock 42, which uses 380 ammo, versus where here Kylen and Crystal were murdered with a 9mm, then it completely excludes him forensically.
Yes. Now, and I that would exclude him, right?
Right. Because
Absolutely.
all we got right now is the connection is geographic references on a date, time, 2 days before the murder, or at least a day and a half before the murder. And I think all of us would agree, if you had a run-in with law enforcement in Moab on the 12th, would you stay in town or would you head out of town? So the question is, did they go south to the LaSalle Mountains or did they go north? And their phone activity would identify that. That's easy enough to determine, and I'm sure they've explored all that. And I'm sure law enforcement knows where they were between the 12th and the 17th. All the public knows about is that they were in, Salt Lake by the 17th, and Brian Laundrie got on a flight. Well, whoop-de-doo. Who cares if he went on a flight? That does not mean he killed 2 ladies a day and a half earlier in Moab.
Right. Okay, so then let's talk about this though too. Now there are stories. There's news coming out here. I just saw one just yesterday, reporting that they may have played pool together. They may have been in the same bar and were in course like a.
Let me answer that one if I can, guys.
Please.
As I was interviewing Kylen and Crystal's friends and whatnot, one of them mentioned that Crystal was playing pool with a guy that was sitting at the table next to them, and it was a young couple. Okay, now that has not been confirmed by any means. We have no idea who it was. All I know is that the friend said that she went back to shooting pool with the guy and everything seemed copacetic. All I want to know is who the young couple was that was in Woody's, who did Crystal shoot pool with. So once again, we can have more confirmation that it was not Brian Laundrie.
That's what I'd like to know too, right?
Well, and I got 2 cents on this.
Please.
We already know that there was conversation by that point from Kylen and Crystal about the creepy guy. If the creepy guy is Brian Laundrie and the couple that they're shooting pool is Brian Laundrie and Gabby is the wonderment, well then why would they be talking about the creepy guy in that sense? They'd say that guy. So I don't think it has anything to do with it. Just using deductive reasoning here.
Right. So it could be 2 separate, completely separate people.
Or it also could be someone. It also could be one of the witnesses is not remembering exactly who they saw or which day. Because when you go back and you ask witnesses who saw what in a bar shooting pool, man, sometimes they'll tell you what happened on Thursday night instead of Saturday.
Right. Well, to a degree, because what you did on 9/11, we all have that answer. What we did 3 Thursdays ago that had a meaningless event, you're not going to remember. So it depends if the event has some meaningful significance. If it was that night, the last night you saw your best friend, you're probably going to remember every single detail of it because it was a tragic moment that, it gets seared into your brain.
Right.
Short of that, witness interviewing is essential when it's fresh because it's not as corrupted as false memory, suggestion. Memory is proven to be very fallible over time. And when there's holes in the memory, the brain will make things up. So if you interview a witness now and then 6 months later, there's additional detail, and a year and a half later, there's even more detail, you got to question the accuracy the further you get away from the event.
Good point. Very, very good point. So as far as what we know, obviously we've heard everything now, and I do appreciate you guys just coming in and kind of breaking this down for us, because like I said, there's been so many stories out here. We got to talk about this John Jacob individual. What's the story behind this? Is this particular person the quote unquote creepy guy that they're talking about or not? Sean Paul, what are your thoughts on this? Because I know that you have your own opinion about this here.
Well, we talk about John Freeman Holt, Colt, or Jason. We just JJ and I call him Holt Colt. Okay, so Holt Colt is on our radar. He's posted a lot of pictures on dispersed camping websites, etc., under his false name, Holt Colt. And we're trying to look at those pictures and pick apart where they are. So initially rumors were these are all photographs of Moab, and he was in Moab and he vowed to rape and murder and blah, blah, blah. So it must be him. But as we're studying the pictures and listening to the story and listening to witnesses and etc., we're taking each one of those pictures that are supposedly Moab pictures. And lo and behold, most of these turned out that they were taken in Torrey.
Interesting. So, Jason, thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at his past history, you look at his threats over his hospital stay in Kansas, is he fits the profile. He vowed that if he ever got out of the hospital, if he ever escaped, he'd go on a rape spree. He said that he would hide in the mountains, and specifically even mentioned the Rocky Mountains as a hiding place until the law cooled down from searching for him. Well, this guy fits that description. He was found in Torrey, Utah, and to get there, he'd have to travel past, generally speaking, Moab to get there, because Torrey's west from Moab, and he traveled all the way from Kansas. So you ask yourself, where was he on the 13th? Where was he on the 14th? And the only thing that we know is that he publicly mentioned under his pseudonym on Facebook, under Jason Holt, is that he started living in Torrey as of the 21st of August. Was it true? Was he there officially a week after the murder, or is it convenient that it was a week after the murder? And, did he camp in the LaSalle Mountains before he found his way to Torrey? And did he go back from Torrey to the LaSalle Mountains because he was already familiar with Kylen and Crystal and was one of his murder rape spree victims? So,
and just so you know, Pascal, from Torrey to Moab and Moab to Torrey is, depending on what way you go, it's within a couple of hours, 1 or 2 hours. It's not that far, but it's a little bit to travel back and forth. And he has some witnesses that account for him in Torrey during the day or this day or the other day or some of the evenings and whatnot. But we're trying to fill all those holes and see if there's any gaps where he could have, slipped away for a night to do something precarious.
Right. So now let's look at the things that exclude him. Okay. Got to be fair, got to be fair and balanced here. The things that exclude him, that were the initial things that excluded him in this process, was the fact that, number one, he had a motorcycle. He was even arrested with the same motorcycle. So it's not like at some point he replaced the motorcycle with a car. Going back to what Kylen and Crystal had said, the creepy guy had a car, so not a motorcycle. And these two would be very clear on the distinctions because they owned a Harley Davidson. So if he showed up in a bike, they would have said, this creepy guy in a bike.
Right.
So,
they would have even said what make and model of bike it was. Crystal knew bikes inside and out.
Right. It's like, hey, this dumbass with a Kawasaki is bothering us. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Because the whole thing is, okay, so the bike excludes him for starters, but doesn't mean that he didn't borrow a car. So we'd like to know if he borrowed a car in the evening or the afternoon and returned, the evening or afternoon of the 13th and came back on the 14th. did he borrow anybody's car? Doesn't matter what his stated claim was. Did he have access to a car? That specifically time range between Friday night and Saturday morning. And if he didn't, then he's innocent as, as a nun. There's no way he committed this crime if he did not have a car and commit this crime, because that's really what he was seen driven by these two girls. So,
and I know one of the witnesses, I had asked if he had borrowed a car, and they said no, we wouldn't give him a car. He took his motorcycle. I don't remember where he was going, but that's what one of the people said.
What are the chances of him actually stealing a car, though?
It's small. There's no report of a vehicle theft. I mean, what do you do?
And Torrey's a small town where definitely that red flag would have popped up.
Gotcha.
The other thing to consider is type of weapon. We know that there was pictures that he posed with a shotgun and an assault style rifle, but there's no mention of a 9mm handgun. So that's the other question that we want from people in Torrey or people that were familiar with John Freeman Colt. Did he have a 9mm? Did he have access to a 9mm? While he was in Torrey, did he go shooting a 9mm? Because maybe he borrowed it and the owner doesn't know it. So if there's a 9mm that he got his hand on for target practice 6 weeks earlier or 2 hours earlier, we want to know about it, because that may mean he borrowed the gun, voluntarily submit that gun for ballistics testing, and rule out the possibility. That's all we're asking. That's what we're looking for.
Gotcha.
Good idea.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point. Wow. So it could be Colt Holt, as you guys have been calling him, or it could just be another random person that was out there.
Coincidence.
Another just
well, and the same point goes for Brian Laundrie as well. I saw one tiny little picture where it showed Gabby holding a pistol.
And that looks like a 380.
And that looks like a 380, you said?
Right. Doesn't look big enough to be a 9mm. But
I agree. It looked like a small gun. That is true. It looked like a small enough pistol to fit in her hand, but it was just a shadowy picture. I mean, it could have been just anything.
Well, hold on. I'll show you the difference. You tell me. 1 second.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's something that I would want to know too. If he had, like, what kind of gun did he have? What was the gun that he used to kill himself? That gun that's in that photo, that Gabby Petito's holding the gun, is it the same gun? Is it a 9mm? Is it a smaller caliber gun? We don't know.
To me, it looks tiny, but I don't even know if it's a gun. I mean, it could be a toy. It's a shadowy picture.
Right. It could be anything, right? But like I said, we don't know yet, because there's a lot of information that they're not giving out, even on Brian Laundrie's death.
Right.
How he took his own life. We still don't know, right? We only have fragments of bones and so on and so forth. So I'm interested to see what they end up finding here, or what they end up coming out with. But
all right, I'm ready for sure and tell.
Okay, sure.
Okay, if anyone's familiar with the Gabby Petito TikTok where she's holding a gun, it looks a lot like this. This is a Glock 42, but it's also considered a 380 because that's the size of rounds it takes.
That is what it looks like.
Oh, I know. 100%. Okay, this is a 9mm. Specifically, this one is a Sarsilmaz 9mm. It's Turkish. I bought it specifically for this case, and we tested the ballistics to see if it matched the crime scene, and I submitted the round to law enforcement to have the FBI lab do a comparison.
It looks too big to fit in Gabby's hand, but they're pretty close, aren't they?
Well,
wow, it's twice as big. The 9mm almost twice as big.
Right. Hold on. Let go.
Thanks for showing us those, Jason. I'm glad you showed me that.
Yeah, I appreciate it
because
too.
like the photo that she's posing for, she's like this, and
Yeah.
if you look to the whole human, the size of a human head looks a lot smaller compared to this.
Yeah, for sure.
You could actually block the view versus partially. Yeah, there is such a difference. And so just spotting it, I could tell, it was more like this type of gun.
It almost even looks smaller than that one.
And it's possible it could be smaller. I don't know what it would be.
Yeah.
Remember, handguns are designed based on their ammo size. You can't get too small. And then you got to downsize in your ammo.
Okay.
So if that gun that he used, right? If the gun that he used was that gun that you just showed, the 380, right? Then there would be no connection whatsoever then.
Right, because the ammo
as far as weapons go, right?
Yeah, because the ammo doesn't match. Correct.
Right, the ammo does not match. So there it is. There's that piece also, ladies and gentlemen, because I know that, like I said, I wanted to have you come on, Jason, as well. Jason, especially because I wanted to be able to debunk some of these things, because a lot of comments that I get, in emails and in DMs and comments in other interviews that I've had with other family members and with Cindy Sue Hunter as well. A lot of people are like, well, Brian was here and this, there's got to be a connection. And I'm like, I don't see personally the connection between them. I see a connection of them crossing paths, sure, but him actually going out there out of his own time to commit a double homicide, to me, is a little bit of a stretch. Obviously, that's my own personal opinion here.
Well, sure, he would have had to come up with a car and a gun.
Exactly.
That he didn't have. He would have had to come up with both, a different vehicle and a different weapon.
Exactly. Right. So it would have to be two different weapons, right? One that we see in Gabby Petito's the photo that's the viral photo that's out here, and then of course the gun, the car as well. He would have to go out of his way, get access to a 9mm gun, go and get a 4-door car, drive out there, be creepy, then of course do his act of violence, right? Do his commit murder, and then discard that 9mm and that car. Now,
Pascal, let me just correct one little thing. We don't know if it's a 4-door. All we know is it's a sedan.
Oh, okay. So it could be a 2-door or a 4-door. But yes, Jason.
I saw one of your viewers' comments. What about the gun that was found in the ocean in Florida? Let's be crystal clear about that gun. That is a .38 revolver. It's not a 9mm. They've never made a 9mm revolver. That gun, just from sight, excludes it, because there's no way that a .38 is going to be a 9mm in any universe.
Bang.
Correct. It's not the gun that fishermen found in the lake.
Gotcha. And I know there's a lot of people that have been speculating that as well, right? Trying to connect the gun that was found in the ocean and Brian Laundrie, and of course the Kylen Crystal murder. And I didn't see that connection either. And the funny thing is if you can comb that ocean, and I'm sure you're going to find other weapons, other guns, others, so on and so forth. I mean, we're talking about Florida here, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's more weapons out there. They're going to pick something up and they're going to still try to see if there's some sort of connection between that weapon and the murders that we have been covering over the past few months. But again, we are hearing it right now.
Believe it or not, I've actually been in the creek myself looking for a weapon. If I could dive down into the bottom of the Colorado River, I would.
Right.
The creek I explored was the one nearest to the girls. A friend and I climbed down into a cavern and down into a slot canyon and drudged through this little creek, seeing if we could find a murder weapon, because it would be the first convenient place to dispose of it on the way out of there. We didn't find anything down there, but everybody's looking.
Yeah. And I totally understand. I mean, we're all, even the internet sleuths, right? The social media and internet sleuths out here are doing everything they can to find out the truth and what's going on with this particular case. Because we all want to find justice for Kylen and Crystal for sure. You know,
Maybe we should talk about what it is that we are looking for right now.
that's a great question. So Jason, what are we looking for right now?
Well, we're always pitching out there that we want to find anyone with video, dash cam, drone, anything like that that was like helpful in the Gabby Petito situation where on Spread Creek Road that they saw the van. Similarly, what we're looking for is anybody that might have been near the campsite where the girls were at, where that maybe we could get the make, model, or at least the color of the car of the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at between, like the 11th to the 14th, but by the time you get to the 14th, it's too late, because I would believe that by the 14th, they were already murdered. He's not going to stick around. He left within minutes of the
He's
murder.
gone.
Once
and let's be clear where we're talking about. This is where Forestry Road 4651 comes off of the LaSalle Loop Road, right up near Whispering Oaks, which is a really nice little neighborhood up there.
Mm-hmm.
That's about half a mile away from where the girls' campsite was. Right. Forestry Road 4651 has a couple of names. Some people call it Elk Camp. Some people call it Bear Camp. It just depends on who's there at the certain hunting season of what they refer to it as. You could see it off the paved road. If you look to your left a little bit, you had to kind of look. Well, Cindy got lucky and a glimpse of light bounced off the car and went into the corner of her eye. But if you were looking down there, you might miss that campsite. I mean, I've driven by it 100 times and didn't really even know it was there.
Yeah.
But the spot we're talking about is Elk Camp, Forestry Road 4651, just 400 yards, 400, just very, I mean, a stone's throw off the pavement is where maybe the bad guy's car would have been parked. Okay, so if anyone's dash cam picked up a vehicle coming on or off of that easement there, that would really be fortunate for us to find that video.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, I'll repeat it. Anybody out there that's watching this is listening to this, because I do have a podcast version of this that's going to be out after this right now. Anybody who's listening or watching, please, if you have any dash cam footage, if you have any cell phone footage, randomly took some selfies somewhere in that general area, please look at your footage. Please look at your stuff. You never know. You might have found or you might have captured something that could bring this particular person or persons to justice. Because like we are talking about it right now, we still do not know who did this heinous crime to these two beautiful souls. And we want to know the truth. We want to know what's going on. And finally, debunk some of these theories that are out here, or confirm them, right? So please look at your dash cam footage, phones, videos, whatever. If you have camcorders that you still use,
and also
pull them up, please.
Also, if you know of someone who had mentioned a 9mm, whether they had bought one or sold one, or whether someone wanted to kind of get rid of one or ditch one, an oddball 9mm situation that maybe in your mind says, hey, that was a little weird. I remember when someone mentioned this about a 9mm. So there's the dash cam that we're looking for, but then there's the lead on the 9mm that we're looking for. Mm-hmm. And then there's the car. It was a car, not a van or a motorcycle. It was a car that we're looking for.
And lastly, the other thing that we're hoping that your audience or the general public can help us with is, yeah, not everybody's suspicious. So if they are aware of a friend or family member that came to Moab during that window, as a conscience check, just call us. Maybe there's something there that they didn't know, that they were suspicious of their friend or family member. But clearly someone did this crime, whether it's a friend or family of theirs, and they don't know, of course they're not going to know. I mean, it's hard to suspect a friend or a family member until they're accused or behind bars, because you never know what inner demons people have until they've come out.
Yeah.
So we want anyone, to call us with a conscience check. Hey, my friend Bob was out there during that week, between August, 10th through the 15th or whatnot. That would be helpful, because then it gives us something that we can vet. And if there's something there, we can forward on to law enforcement.
Yeah. I mean, any little bit helps, right? Any little bit helps, and any little bit goes a long way. I'll just say that for sure. Well, I wish I could have the answers for you guys, for you fellas, because obviously, I've been watching this and keeping a close eye on this story and this whole case, this mysterious homicide, for a long time. And I wish that at the end of this conversation, I could say, hey, we have all the answers, right?
Thank you for getting involved, Pascal. Communicating with my sister and then getting in touch with Jason and I and helping us get the word out there, because, if just the right person hears, oh, I remember a friend of mine was being goofy about this 9mm, or a friend of mine was really acting weird at that time, or if someone remembers seeing a guy in a car, or if someone caught dash cam up on Loop Road that day, and everyone who goes to Moab leaves. They've gone all around the world. Anyone that was in Moab in August could be anywhere around the world. And that's part of the reason why I like to preach this equal coverage idea. We haven't got Gabby level of coverage. We have our Kylen and Crystal level of coverage. Imagine what it would be like to be a Native American or a Black family who gets even less coverage. It's not right. It's not fair. So just like Gabby's dad, I also like to preach equality of coverage. And if we had the Gabby coverage, maybe then we'd have someone who called in and said, oh, hey, I have dash cam. And same with, I lived on the Indian reservation for 10 years where these things go unheard of and unreported. It's phenomenal how poorly the coverage is based on race and status and society. It's unbelievable, the difference in coverage. I'd like to see the coverage be more like the alert that comes out when a child goes missing. Okay, and bang, all of a sudden on your cell phone, you're getting a, hey, this and that child in this age and this description, and here's the vehicle with the license plate number, and by golly, call in. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had that kind of coverage on every case? We'd get way more cases solved if there was that much involvement like there was in the Gabby case. Now we're getting more coverage because the Gabby case is kind of closed. But gosh, I feel really horrible for other families that have gone through what I've gone through years ago and have got zero coverage, So that's another thing I kind of like to preach, is that equality of coverage it's just not there. And I'd like to see some sort of standard procedure, just like when a child is abducted for missing persons. I'm not saying I want to beep everybody's phone every time an adult goes missing. And I understand why law enforcement did the attempt to locate instead of the missing persons. But I'm saying that after the fact, when something like this happens, it sure is sad to see the coverage based on race or religion or social status. It's just horrible.
Sean Paul, if I had the world on a string, I'll just say that. Okay. I think that I wish all missing person stories and all cases, double homicides, things that have not been fully fleshed out would be in the forefront of people in people's minds and have as much passion as the Gabby Petito case. I mean, the Gabby Petito case, don't want to tap on it too much because we've already tapped on it enough, but that became everyone's breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a solid.
Well, that's what we wish. We wish we had it blown out of the water like that.
Right. And I wish it was like that for every single case. I just talked about another case yesterday of a young black woman that was mysteriously died. Right. And it's not getting the traction that I feel like it rightfully deserves. People turn a blind eye when it comes to the life of a person of color or someone who of the indigenous lineage. It's just ridiculous that we have to push and fight so hard, especially even with your daughter's case and her wife's case. This is something that we still have to push so hard. And is it because they were a gay couple, members of the LGBTQ plus community? Is it because of that? Why wouldn't this story not be in the forefront and at the tip of everybody's tongues and the tips of everybody's brains? Still doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm hoping,
I think we might be getting there because of Jason and I fighting like hell to try to get coverage, and because of people like you and maybe even Dog the Bounty Hunter is going to come and help us. But I think that we're starting to get there. It sure would have been nice if we had this coverage on August 19th and not January 3rd.
Right. Not 2022, but last year. Right. One last thing. Speaking of that, I just said something about them, of course, being part of the LGBTQ plus community. They're a gay couple. Have you guys ruled out the possibility of this being a hate crime, Jason?
Well, the interesting thing about motive, motive does not lead to a killer. Usually, motive just explains why the killer killed. So it's really like inappropriate to base it on motive per se. Mm-hmm. Now, it's something that you can use as a tool to look to ponder, to develop a theory. But once you ask the question, who disliked this couple for being gay, and there's a negative answer, there's dead silence, then you move on to other theories, because this is a very well-liked couple in the community. And if they had a natural enemy, everybody would have pointed to that person or persons by now.
Right. No, good point. Very, very good point. One last thing before we get going. I know that some people are wanting to know how they can get in contact with you guys. There's two different questions I do have. One, I understand that there is a GoFundMe. Am I correct on that?
No. Pascal, I have since closed my GoFundMe.
Okay.
Now, maybe I'll have to open that up again in the future if I have court costs or whatever. But right now, I have shut down my GoFundMe, and I have given Diane Brooks the blessing to go to her GoFundMe, which is the one that she started, which is really small right now, but it's just to help with forensic costs. And I think maybe she had sent out some money to someone who was trying to get satellite image, but mine is now closed. It may reopen in the future. I don't know, but I'm promoting the one that's called Catch a Killer, and Diane started that, and those monies are being channeled towards forensics.
Okay. All right. Well, then, is there a phone number or anything of that sort that they can contact you guys with any information, or if they want to help out? Is there a number that they can reach you guys at?
And they're more than welcome to call me at my cell phone number. I mean, that's the most direct way to get a live person, because the general number to the Grand County Sheriff's Office will get you to dispatch, and they have to relay it or give it to a voicemail. But if
Right.
you want to talk to a live person nearly 24/7, call me 801-759-2248. That's 801-759-2248.
Okay, I just put it in the
And then you could call the Grand County Sheriff's tip line, or you could also call the FBI or go online and try to navigate the FBI's tip line. I tried to do that once, and it took me 27 minutes. It was really hard to do. That's something I really think they should streamline, is the ability for someone off the streets to make a tip. Oh my God, I'm kind of an educated person, and it took me 28 minutes to do an FBI tip on the phone, and it took me 38 minutes to do an FBI tip on the computer. Most people, I don't know if they would try that hard. I mean, I'm the father of the victim, and it took me a half hour to make a tip.
Wow. That's not good. Should be easy.
So that needs to be streamlined.
Right. That should be easy as hell. That should be, should be very easy to do. And that's crazy.
So what Jason's saying is it's a hell of a lot easier to call him.
Well, of course, if you do have any valid information, Queen Kimberly just did say something that is very true. If you have valid information, please contact him. If you don't have any valid information, do not spam, do not, bother him with information that is obsolete. Okay. But
correct.
Gentlemen, I want to say a big thank you to both of you guys, Jason Jensen, Sean Paul Schulte. Thank you both for being on. I really
Jason, thanks for coming on this morning. Pascal, thanks for helping us spread the word. I really appreciate it. Call me anytime.
Always. Of course, I will. But I do appreciate you guys putting in the time. And Jason, I appreciate you putting in your energy and time and effort and passion behind this case, and just trying to find and bring justice for Kylen and Crystal. I really do.
It's been amazing to watch Jason, how grounded he is, how much he thinks out of the box. It's just been amazing to watch him work. It's really given me something to go off of, something to lean on and engage to be able to get through my own day. When I was doing this on my own, before Jason came on board, and I'm in a small community of Moab taking tips about people, and I'm standing in line with this suspect, and another suspect that I have is crossing the street, and another one pulls in over here at the park, and I'm starting to get freaked out and scared, and I don't know what to do, because I don't know who's the suspect and who's not and what's going on, and I'm trying to take in these clues, and then all of a sudden here comes Jason.
Remember, Sean Paul, someone even left a shell casing, a 9mm shell casing on your table, and you're like wondering, wow, is this a clue or is this a threat?
It's true. I mean, I show up to my picnic table where I was in the park every day for 30 days doing clues, and here's a 9mm shell casing. And I'm like, wait a minute, what is this doing here? Yeah, gosh. And how many tips from so many people that would come and my clue booth, the reason why it was so interesting was because the people that came to my clue booth were people that would not go in the cop shop. You understand? They came to me because they didn't want to go into a cop shop. They walked up to me and spilled their guts out to me because they felt safe that they weren't going to be at a threat to be questioned by anybody, because people came out of the woodwork. Even some weirdos and bad guys came out of the woodwork to tell me who they thought did it. People that wouldn't have called the police. It's very interesting how that clue booth worked. Very interesting.
Oh man. And I can only imagine what kind of information and what kind of stuff you saw aside from just the shell casing. But unfortunately, we got to wrap up the show. But I just wanted to say again, thank you to both of you guys coming on. The best of luck to you both. Of course, love to have you back on if there's more information out here, or if you guys crack the case and find more information. Would love to have you back on. And we're all rooting for you guys, and we're all praying for you. So thank you.
All right, let me just say one thing, Pascal. I'd like tippers, please keep these tips crystal clear, and let's all be Kylen kind, please.
Beautifully said. Again, guys, Sean Paul Schulte, Jason Jensen, thank you again. Thank you so much. God bless to you guys, and happy searching. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Well, guys, as you heard from the man himself, be kind out there. And if you are going to make phone calls, okay, if you are going to call with information, do us that solid, okay? Do the right thing. Be concise. Be on point with your information, okay? Don't be all over the place. Don't be sloppy, because they get a lot of calls. They get a lot of information out here that can be incredibly misleading. So do not mislead. Give them information that they need and keep them moving, okay? Because you're just doing something. You're helping them get closer to finding justice for those two individuals. Again, guys, I really appreciate all y'all for being on, being a part of the conversation. Do me a solid. For those of y'all who are all still here, do me this solid. Please share this feed. This is more important than anything in the world right now. We need to get this story out here. We need to get this information out here. So please share this story. Share this feed. If you're listening to this on podcast, okay, which you can find on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, everywhere. Please share this. Let's get justice for Kylen and Crystal, those two beautiful souls that are no longer here anymore. We do not know what's going on. We do not know who did what they did. And it's heartbreaking. Let's bring this person or persons to justice as quickly as possible. All right? Toot sweets, everybody. Toot sweets. Anyway, much love to you guys. Hit that like button down below. Of course, nuke that subscribe button. All right? And much love to you, Sean Paul Schulte. I appreciate you coming on again. Thank you so much, my brother. But anyway, much love to you guys. It's time to get going. Hit that subscribe button. Share this feed. Put it on Twitter. Put it on Reddit. Get it out here, y'all. We had a lot of information here that was debunked and confirmed and all that stuff. Please share. All right? All right, guys. Much love to you guys. Be good to yourselves. Be good to one another. And I'll see you guys in the next show. See you guys soon. This is the Pascal Show. Bye.
You're going to perform tonight. I can't make this interview boring because this man is too exciting as a host. And I'm truly saying this, and if y'all can't do this, me and this man here is going to leave and go somewhere else where we can get some love. I want everyone in the building to say, I love Pascal on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Wow.
Homeowners and property managers, if you're looking for effective and humane ways to remove wild animals and deal with the damage that they have caused, we have good news for you. Introducing Wildlife Command Center. We are the only wildlife company that checks 70 different areas on a structure to determine the answers to the following questions. For more information, call us now.
The Fur and Leather Center providing the highest of fur and leather goods.